The moment his hand hit my shoulder, I didn't react. Not because I couldn't. Not because I didn't feel it. But because I had already done what mattered. The pressure of his grip was firm, dismissive. The kind of touch you give when you've already decided the outcome and everyone else just hasn't caught up yet. Around us, the station moved like nothing had changed. Conversations continued. Footsteps echoed. Traders argued over prices that suddenly felt very small. And in the middle of it, a girl stood frozen. Her skin had gone pale. Not the soft shifting tones of her species, not the quiet glow she carried when she talked about distant oceans and impossible dreams. This was different. This was fear. The soldier didn't look at me again after the shove. I wasn't important enough for that. To him, I was an interruption already resolved. That was fine. People like him always believed the moment ended when they decided it did. I adjusted my sleeve slowly, deliberately. No rush. No anger. Just habit. The kind of small, controlled motion that comes from knowing that panic is a luxury you don't get to afford. My name is Kale Marin. I am a diplomatic liaison for Earth's consular division. I don't carry a weapon. I don't raise my voice. And I don't fight battles. I make reports. I file documents. I press buttons. The girl's name was Sina. She had been sitting on that bench less than a minute ago, waiting. Not for rescue. Not for protection. Just for an update. 3 weeks of paperwork. 2 approvals already cleared. 1 step away from a future she barely believed in. Now she stood with a binding cord tightening around her wrist, her eyes searching the crowd for something, anything, that might tell her this wasn't how the story ended. The soldier said something to her in a language I didn't fully understand, but I didn't need to. I understood tone. I understood certainty. And I understood exactly what kind of situation this was. I stepped forward. Not quickly. Not dramatically. Just enough. I am Kale Marin, I said, my voice even measured. Earth Diplomatic Liaison. This individual is under consular protection. You are required to halt this action pending review. He looked at me then. Not like I was a threat. Not even like I was a person. Just an object that had decided to speak. Earth, he said. 1 word. Flat. Empty. Behind him, one of the others made a quiet sound that might have been amusement. We've heard the name, he continued. It means nothing. Then he pushed me back. Not hard enough to hurt. Not meant to. Just enough to move me out of the way. And that was the moment. Not the shove. Not the words. That quiet, absolute certainty. That assumption that nothing would happen. That no one would come. That this, what was happening right here, was the final version of reality. I reached into my pocket. The device was small. Barely noticeable. It didn't glow. It didn't hum. It didn't announce itself. It didn't need to. I pressed it. No sound. No light. No reaction from anyone around me. The soldier had already turned away, guiding Sina toward the corridor. She looked back once, her eyes wide, searching. I met her gaze. And for just a second I wondered what she saw. A man who had failed? Or someone who wasn't finished yet? I raised the device slightly, close enough that my voice wouldn't carry. This is Liaison Marin, I said quietly. Station Tessavar. Incident Code Omega-7. Consular Protection Breach. Category 1. Subject Sina Velhari. Case 774 Alpha 9. Physical interference confirmed. I paused just long enough. Time stamping now. I lowered the device. And then I did something that confused everyone who saw it. I walked to the nearest bench. And I sat down. No rush. No panic. No attempt to follow. Just waiting. Because the hardest part of this job isn't acting. It's knowing when you already have. I wasn't always this calm. That's the part people usually get wrong. They see the moment. The stillness. The lack of reaction. And they think it's something natural. Something effortless. It isn't. It's learned. Built, piece by piece, over years of being in rooms where everything looks like it's under control right up until it isn't. My name is Kale Marin. I've been stationed at Tessavara Crossroads for 14 months. In that time, I've processed 943 asylum applications. mediated 11 trade disputes that none of the involved parties will ever admit were their fault, attended more diplomatic functions than I can count, most of them involving polite smiles and conversations that circle around the truth without ever touching it. I don't carry a weapon. I don't have authority in the way most species understand it. I have access. And I have a system that works whether anyone believes in it or not. Sina didn't look like someone who should matter on a galactic scale. She barely reached my chest. Her movements were careful, like she had learned early that taking up too much space was dangerous. Her species, the Velhari, had that shifting skin tone, a constant reflection of internal state. The first time we spoke, it had been a soft silver. Curious. Careful. Hopeful in a way that didn't quite trust itself. She had arrived with almost nothing. A damaged data card. A registration number from a processing center that had likely forgotten her the moment she left its system. I had seen cases like hers before. Most of them didn't end well. But this one, I had decided early that it would. Not because I was special. Not because she was. But because the system existed for a reason. And reasons matter. We spoke every few days. Short conversations at first. Clarifications. Document requests. Verification steps. Then questions. She asked about Earth. Not the official kind of questions. Not the ones you find in orientation packets or cultural briefings. Real ones. What does it feel like, she asked once, to stand near water that doesn't end? I remember pausing at that. Because it's the kind of question you don't think about until someone who has never had the concept asks it like it's a myth. Like standing at the edge of something bigger than you, I told her. And knowing it's not trying to take anything from you. She had gone quiet after that. Then she said, very softly, I think I would like to see that. That was 3 weeks into her case. By the 4th, 2 of her required documents had cleared. By the 6th, she was 1 approval away from leaving Tessavara behind. She had been sitting on that bench today waiting for me to tell her that. I had been looking forward to it. That's the part that stays with you. Not the incident. Not the response. The interruption. 1,400 station hours. 6 Kareth enforcement officers. Direct approach. No hesitation. They didn't scan the area. Didn't check for resistance. Didn't even slow down. They moved like they already owned the outcome. The lead officer had a face built for certainty. Hard lines. Controlled expression. The kind of presence that comes from doing the same thing enough times that it stops feeling like a choice. He spoke. Direct. Words like jurisdiction. Property. Authority. The kind of language that turns people into objects if you let it. Sina stood when they approached her. I could see the change from across the promenade. Silver to gray. Hope to fear. It happens faster than most people expect. The binding cord came out. Standard issue. Efficient. Final. I started moving before I consciously decided to. 30 meters isn't far unless there are people in the way. Someone stepped aside. Someone didn't. I adjusted. Closed the distance just as the cord tightened around her wrist. That's when I spoke. That's when he looked at me. And that's when he decided I didn't matter. Most species make the same mistake the first time they encounter us. They look for obvious indicators. Fleet size. Territory. Alliance structure. History. They don't see what isn't designed to be visible. They don't understand systems that aren't built for display. To them we're new. Unproven. A species that files complaints instead of making threats. They see paperwork. They see process. They see nothing. And to be fair, most of the time, that's exactly what they get from everyone else. The Kareth weren't being reckless. They were being logical. They had expanded for 11 years. Absorbed smaller species. Ignored objections. Sat through council hearings that ended in delays and diluted resolutions. They had learned something from that. They had learned that concern costs nothing. That most species will watch. That even when someone says, stop, what they usually mean is please. So when they heard Earth, they filtered it through that understanding. A gray world. A young civilization. No major alliances. No territorial claims beyond their origin system. A name. Nothing more. The soldier's hand leaving my shoulder wasn't the problem. The problem was what it represented. A conclusion. A belief that the story had already been written. That nothing else was coming. I sat on the bench and watched the corridor where they had taken her. Not because I had given up, but because there was nothing left for me to do here. That part was already handled. A merchant approached me after a minute or two. Orvis. So, careful. The kind of being who survives by paying attention. What was that? He asked, glancing toward the corridor. What did you just do? I made a call, I said. He frowned slightly. What does that mean? I looked at the small device in my hand for a moment before slipping it back into my pocket. It means, I said, they know. He followed my gaze to the far wall, where the deep-range sensor display tracked incoming and outgoing traffic. Ships moving along predictable routes. Normal patterns. Safe patterns. What can Earth do? He asked quietly. It wasn't a challenge. It was an honest question. I leaned back slightly, letting the noise of the promenade settle around us again. They said my name means nothing, I said. He hesitated. Does it? He asked. I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I watched the sensor display. Watched the empty edges of its range. Waited. Because the truth is, meaning isn't something you declare. It's something that arrives. And when it does, everyone sees it at the same time. For a while, nothing happened. That's the part people underestimate. They expect immediate consequences. Flash. Noise. Something visible that confirms the decision mattered. But real systems don't work like that. They move quietly first. I kept my eyes on the sensor display. Routine traffic scrolled past. Cargo vessels entering standard approach vectors. Passenger shuttles requesting docking clearance. A maintenance rig drifting slightly off alignment before correcting itself. Normal. Predictable. Orvis was still standing beside me, though he had shifted his weight slightly, the way people do when they're trying to decide whether to stay or leave. What are we waiting for? He asked. Confirmation, I said. Of what? I didn't answer. Because right then, the display changed. It was subtle at first. A new signature appeared at the very edge of the sensor range. So faint it almost looked like a glitch. A blip that didn't quite resolve cleanly. Then another. And another. They didn't come from the same direction. That was the first thing. 7 separate vectors. All converging. Orvis leaned forward slightly, his posture tightening. Is that traffic? No, I said. The system tried to classify them. Tags flickered, updated, recalculated. The station sensors weren't built for this kind of pattern. Too many inputs. Too coordinated. Too fast. What is that? He asked again, quieter now. I watched as the first signature stabilized. Then a designation appeared. Earth Diplomatic Registry. The next ones didn't carry that tag. They resolved slower. Heavier. Their profiles taking shape piece by piece as the system struggled to keep up. Escort configurations. Then more. And more. Orvis went very still. They're not slowing down, he said. No, I replied. They're not requesting approach clearance. No. He turned his head slightly, looking at me now instead of the display. How many? I waited a moment as another cluster resolved. Not enough yet, I said. That confused him. It was supposed to. Because this wasn't about overwhelming force. Not yet. This was about certainty. About making something undeniable before anything else had to happen. On the display, the vectors tightened. Not aggressively. Not erratically. Perfectly calculated. Each ship adjusting its trajectory in relation to the others, forming something that wasn't quite a formation yet but was already more than coincidence. They knew where to go, Orvis said slowly. Yes. They knew before. Yes. He didn't finish the thought. He didn't need to. Because that was the part that unsettled him the most. Not that ships were arriving, but that they had already been moving. Somewhere, far beyond the edge of the station's awareness, decisions had been made before I ever sat down on this bench. Protocols activated. Vectors calculated. Assets redirected. All waiting for one thing. Confirmation. I checked my uplink briefly. Acknowledged. Timestamp verified. That was all it ever showed. It didn't tell me what was coming. It didn't need to. Orvis looked back at the display as another signature locked into place. 17, he whispered. Still counting, I said. They're surrounding the station. Not the station. He blinked. Then what? I didn't look at him. Everything that matters right now, I said. Silence settled between us. Not empty, heavy. The kind of silence that forms when understanding starts to catch up with reality. They said your name means nothing, Orvis said after a moment. I nodded slightly. On the display, another ship resolved. Larger than the others. Its classification took longer to finalize, the system cross-referencing databases, updating models, recalculating scale. When it finally settled, the tag appeared with a delay that felt almost intentional. Carrier configuration. Orvis exhaled slowly. That's not a response, he said. No, I agreed. That's a statement. I let a small pause sit there before answering. Yes. He watched the converging vectors for a few more seconds, then asked the question that always comes next. What happens now? I leaned back against the bench, eyes still on the display. Now the pattern was clear. No randomness. No hesitation. Every movement precise. Deliberate. Measured. They get a message, I said. And if they ignore it? I thought about that for exactly 1 second. Then I said, they won't. Because by the time you can see something like this coming, the decision has already been made for you. Commander Usha had spent most of his life believing in patterns. Patterns of behavior. Patterns of power. Patterns that told you what mattered and what didn't long before anyone said it out loud. That was how you survived long enough to command a ship like the Iron Mandate. You learned to recognize when something was routine, and when it wasn't. The retrieval operation at Tessavara had been routine. Velhari subject identified. Jurisdiction confirmed. Detainment executed. Minimal resistance. The Earth liaison had been an inconvenience. Not a threat. Not even a complication worth noting beyond the report he would file later. That was the pattern. That was the expectation. It was why he had already moved on to the next set of tasks by the time his censor officer spoke. Commander. There was something in the tone that made him look up immediately. Not fear. Not panic. But tension. Controlled. Unwanted. Usha turned slightly in his command chair. Report. The censor officer, Tren, didn't answer right away. He was staring at his display with the kind of focus that meant the information in front of him didn't fit cleanly into any existing category. We have incoming signatures, Tren said finally. Usha nodded once. Traffic? No, sir. That got his full attention. How many? Tren adjusted something on his console, as if the number might change if he gave it another second. 17 confirmed. More resolving. Usha leaned forward slightly. Origin. That's the issue, sir. Tren hesitated, then continued. They're not coming from a single vector. We're tracking convergence from multiple directions. At least 7. Usha stood. That wasn't routine. That wasn't traffic. That wasn't anything that happened by accident. Classification, he said. Tren's fingers moved quickly across the interface, pulling data, cross-referencing signatures. Lead vessel is broadcasting Earth Diplomatic Registry, he said. Designation, Covenant-class cruiser. Usha's expression didn't change. But something behind it did. And the rest? Mixed, Tren replied. 2 destroyer class. 4 support craft. Additional signatures still resolving. He paused. Commander, one of them is a carrier. Silence settled across the bridge. Not spoken. Felt. A carrier didn't arrive by coincidence. It didn't respond to minor disputes. It didn't reposition for paperwork. Usha moved toward the viewport. The stars beyond it looked exactly the same as they always did. Cold. Distant. Uninvolved. They offered no answers. Behind him, the sensor board updated again. 18. 19. 20. Each new signature locking into a pattern that was becoming harder to ignore. They're adjusting formation, Tren said quietly. Usha didn't turn. How? Not toward us directly, Tren said. They're positioning. For what? Tren didn't answer immediately, because there wasn't a clean answer. Finally, he said, for control. Usha's jaw tightened slightly. Control of what? The station? The surrounding space? He thought about the Earth liaison. The calm voice. The small device. The lack of reaction after being pushed aside. He had noticed it at the time. Registered it. Dismissed it. Because it didn't fit the pattern. Because Earth didn't act like this. Because Earth. Open a channel, Usha said. Sir? To the lead vessel. Tren hesitated. They've already opened one to us. Of course they had. Usha straightened his uniform. Smoothed a line that didn't need smoothing. Small, controlled movements. Reclaiming structure. Put it through. The main display shifted. The sensor grid disappeared, replaced by a transmission feed. A woman appeared on the screen. Older. Composed. No visible strain. No urgency. She wasn't leaning forward. Wasn't issuing commands. She was simply as if everything that needed to happen had already been decided, and this was just the part where it was explained. Her uniform carried insignia Usha didn't immediately recognize. But not diplomatic. Something else. Her name appeared beneath the image. Admiral Voss. Earth Strategic Deployment Force. Usha held her gaze. State your intent, he said. She didn't answer immediately. Not because she was uncertain. Because she didn't need to rush. Commander, she said calmly, you currently have in your custody an individual registered under Earth consular protection. Her voice was even. Measured. Controlled. I have reviewed the incident, she continued, including the physical contact made with our liaison. The pause. 1 second. No more. You have 4 hours to return her, she said, unharmed and without condition. Usha kept his posture steady. Admiral, he replied, the subject falls under hegemony jurisdiction pursuant to. We can discuss legal frameworks, she said, cutting across him without raising her voice. During the 4 hours. Silence. Not tension. Finality. Usha felt something unfamiliar settle in the back of his mind. Not fear. Not yet. But recognition. This wasn't a negotiation. It wasn't even a dispute. It was a timeline. And if we decline, he asked. Another brief pause. Not for effect. For clarity. Then, she said, we begin a different kind of conversation. She didn't elaborate. She didn't need to. The channel closed. The display returned to the sensor grid. 23 signatures. Still increasing. No one on the bridge spoke. Usha turned slowly back toward the viewport. The stars hadn't changed. But the space between them had. He thought about the report he would send. The language he would use. The way he would describe something that didn't fit any established category. Then he made a decision. Open a priority channel to High Command, he said. The communications officer complied immediately. The connection took longer than usual. Usha watched the sensor board as he waited. Watched the formation tighten. Watched the pattern complete itself. When the channel finally opened, he spoke carefully. This is Commander Usha of the Iron Mandate, he said. A brief pause. I need to report a developing situation. Another pause. Longer this time. He chose his next words with precision. We may have made an error. Admiral Voss did not rush. That was the first thing I noticed when I stepped onto the bridge of the Covenant. No one was shouting. No one was running. Consoles hummed quietly, officers moved with measured precision, and the entire ship felt like it had already reached its conclusion and was simply executing it. She stood near the center of the bridge, hands resting lightly behind her back, watching the main display without tension. Liaison Marin, she said without turning. You took your time. I had a bench, I replied. That earned the smallest shift at the corner of her expression. Not quite a smile. Recognition. Report, she said. I handed her the incident file. She didn't skim it. Didn't ask for a summary. She read. Line by line. Every word. I stood there and waited because that was how this worked. You didn't rush decisions like this. You let them settle into place exactly where they belonged. Behind her, the display showed the iron mandates still holding position. Not fleeing. Not advancing. Waiting. They pushed you, Voss said after a moment, still looking at the report. Yes. And you identified yourself. Yes. And they proceeded anyway. Yes. She nodded once, as if confirming something she had already known. Good, she said. Orvis, who had somehow managed to get clearance to stand at the edge of the bridge, shifted slightly at that word. Good, he echoed before he could stop himself. Voss finally looked up. It clarifies the situation, she said simply. She set the report down and picked up a tablet. The same 2 pages I would later recognize were already displayed. Commander Usha will attempt to resolve this through legal channels, she continued. He'll cite jurisdiction, precedent, council delays. It's the correct move given his framework. Will it work? Orvis asked quietly. Voss looked at him for a moment. No, she said. Not dismissive. Just accurate. She turned slightly, addressing the bridge. Prepare transmission package, she said. Public and direct. Aye, Admiral. No hesitation. No discussion. The kind of response that comes from people who have done this before. Orvis frowned. Public. Yes, Voss said. This isn't just about the subject. I understood then. This wasn't a rescue. It was a demonstration. She sent the transmission. The Kareth response came exactly as expected. A document. Structured. It appeared on the main display, page after page of legal language scrolling past in precise formatting. Citations. Precedents. Jurisdictional arguments layered on top of each other like armor. Orvis leaned forward slightly, reading. It's comprehensive, he said. Yes, I agreed. They're right, he added after a moment. Under council law. Yes, Voss said again. And then she sent our response. 2 pages. That was all. Orvis blinked. That's it. For now, she said. The document appeared beside the Kareth transmission. Structured in a way that didn't argue. It listed trade routes, financial dependencies, supply chains, points of integration that the Kareth had built over years of expansion, all quietly passing through systems that Earth had positioned itself inside. Each line ended the same way. A notation. A mechanism. A way to stop it. Not a threat. Not even a promise. Just information. Orvis read it once. Then again. Slower. They didn't see this, he said finally. No, I said. They thought this was bureaucracy. It is, Voss replied. Orvis looked at her. That's the part they misunderstood, she continued. Bureaucracy is only meaningless if no one enforces it. Silence settled across the bridge again. The kind that comes when something shifts from abstract to real. Open the public channel, Voss said. This time, Orvis didn't question it. The broadcast went out across Tessava. Across every ship. Every terminal. Every listening system within range. Voss appeared on the feed, exactly as she stood now. Unhurried. Certain. This is Admiral Voss of the Earth Strategic Deployment Force, she said. Her voice carried evenly, filling the space without force. We are present in response to a confirmed breach of Earth consular protection. No embellishment. No dramatics. Just facts. She stated Sina's name. Her case number. The treaty. The articles. Everything verifiable. Everything real. Full documentation is available, she concluded. You are invited to review it. And then she ended the transmission. No warning. No escalation. Just silence. For a moment, nothing changed. Activity. Across the station. Across the network. Requests spiked. Terminals lit up. Ships began pulling data. Checking. Reading. Verifying. Orvis watched the incoming logs on a nearby console, his eyes widening slightly. They're looking it up, he said. Yes, I replied. They're checking if they're on it. Yes. He leaned back slowly. They thought it was symbolic, he murmured. So did most people, I said. The sensor display shifted slightly as one of our ships adjusted position. Not aggressive. Not threatening. Just closer. A reminder. Time passed. Not much. Enough. Then the channel opened. Commander Usha appeared again. He looked the same. But not quite. There was something behind his eyes now. Calculation. Adjustment. We are prepared to transfer the subject, he said. No speech. No argument. Just a decision. Of course, Voss replied. We'll receive her at the consular bay. The channel closed. Orvis exhaled slowly. That's it, he asked. Voss glanced at him. For this part, she said. Because the rest, the part that mattered most, had already happened the moment everyone started watching. The shuttle bay was brighter than it needed to be. Clean lines. Open space. Nothing hidden, nothing obscured. The kind of design that makes everything visible on purpose. I stood near the edge as the transfer vessel settled into place. No rush. No urgency. Just timing. The hatch opened with a soft release of pressure. For a second, nothing moved. Then she stepped out. Sina looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically, but in the way people do after something has tried to reduce them. She held a blanket around her shoulders, her movements slow, careful, like she wasn't entirely sure the ground beneath her was real yet. Her skin was still pale. Not the ash gray of fear anymore. But not silver either. Something in between. Uncertain. The Kareth officer who had escorted her didn't speak. Didn't look at anyone. He simply turned and walked back into the shuttle the moment she crossed the threshold. Like closing a file. Like ending a task. The hatch sealed behind him. And just like that, she was ours again. Not through force. Not through resistance. Through process. Through something they hadn't believed in until it stood in front of them. I walked toward her. Not fast. Not dramatic. Just steady. She looked up when I stopped in front of her. For a moment, she didn't say anything. Then, very quietly, "Is it over?" I considered that. Because the honest answer is never as simple as people want it to be. "For today," I said. That seemed to be enough. Her shoulders dropped slightly. The tension she had been holding, tight, invisible, constant, eased just a little. Her skin shifted. Not fully, but closer. Silver, trying to return. "I thought," she started, then stopped. I waited. "I thought no one would come," she said. I nodded once. "They did," I replied. "Not we. Not I. Because that mattered. Because it wasn't about one person. It never was." She looked past me then, taking in the bay. The crew standing at a respectful distance. The open space. The absence of threat. Her grip on the blanket loosened slightly. I gestured toward the exit. "Come on," I said. "Let's get you processed properly this time." That earned the faintest hint of something that might have been a smile. Above us, behind the observation glass, I knew people were watching. Orvis. Station representatives. Others. The kind of observers who don't act in the moment but remember everything afterward. That was fine. They were part of this too. Because what happened here wasn't just a recovery. It was a message. And messages only matter if they're seen. As we walked, I noticed her glancing toward the open bay doors, where beyond them the stars stretched out in every direction. Endless. Uninterrupted. She slowed slightly. "Is it always like that?" she asked. "Like what?" "So, open." I followed her gaze. For a moment I thought about oceans. About edges that don't exist. "Yes," I said. Her skin warmed just a fraction more. Not gold. Not yet. But moving. That was enough. Behind us, the Covenant remained in position. Along with the rest of the fleet. Not advancing. Not celebrating. Just present. Out there, the Iron Mandate had already begun its departure. Slow. Deliberate. No sudden movements. No final statements. Just distance. Because once a decision like that is made, there's nothing left to prove. Up in the observation deck, Orvis stood among others who had arrived quietly over the last few minutes. I would learn later what they talked about. What questions they asked. But even from here, I could see it. The shift. The recalibration. The moment where something abstract becomes real. One of them turned to Orvis. I couldn't hear the words. But I knew the question. I had seen it before. And I would see it again. Is the list open? That was always the question that came after. Not how strong are you? Not will you fight? Is it real? I guided Sina through the corridor, away from the bay, toward the part of the ship where paperwork would begin again. Forms. Verification. Final approvals. The quiet, unremarkable steps that actually change lives. Behind us, the stars didn't change. They never do. But the space between them, that's where meaning lives. And today, that had shifted. The next part didn't happen in the shuttle bay. It didn't happen on the bridge. It didn't even happen in space. It happened in systems. Quiet ones. Invisible ones. The kind most species ignore until they stop working. I was in the briefing room when the Kareth response came through in full. Orvis was there too, seated across from me, reading from a terminal he had been given temporary access to. He had the posture of someone trying to keep up with something that kept changing shape the longer he looked at it. "It's extensive," he said after a while. That was an understatement. 63 pages. Layered legal arguments. Citations from council resolutions. Precedents stretching back centuries. Every line crafted to do one thing. Delay. Because that's how most conflicts in the galaxy are resolved. You don't win. You outlast. They file back. Time stretches. Urgency fades. Eventually, whatever sparked the issue becomes less important than the process itself. Orvis scrolled slowly. "They're not refusing," he said. "They're redirecting." "Yes," I said. "Into a framework that favors them." "Yes." He looked up at me. "That would take months," he said. "Minimum," I agreed. "And in that time..." He didn't finish. He didn't need to. In that time, Sina would disappear into a system designed to erase individuals without technically violating any rules. "That's how it usually works," he said quietly. "Yes." "And Earth?" I didn't answer. Because right then, the second transmission went out. Orvis's terminal updated automatically. He frowned slightly. "That's shorter," he said. 2 pages. He read the first one quickly. Then he slowed down. Then he went back to the beginning and started again. This time, more carefully. "It's not a rebuttal," he said. "No. It's not even addressing their argument." "No." He looked up again, something shifting behind his eyes. "It's a list." "Yes." He went back to it. Line by line. Trade routes. Freight corridors. Financial instruments. Supply chains. Each one tied to Kareth infrastructure. Each one tied quietly and very deliberately to Earth systems. And at the end of each entry, a mechanism, a legal pathway, a way to interrupt it, suspend it, redirect it. Orvis sat back slowly. "They didn't know," he said. "No," I replied. "They built their expansion on top of this." "Yes. And now?" He looked at the list again. "They're seeing it for the first time." I nodded. Because that was the point. Power isn't always about what you can destroy. Sometimes it's about what you can pause. What you can touch without striking. What you can shift without breaking. "They thought this was bureaucracy," Orvis said. "It is," I answered. He gave a short, quiet breath that might have been a laugh if it wasn't so close to disbelief. "This is not how bureaucracy usually works." "No," I said. "It depends on who built it." The room went quiet again. Not empty. Full of something settling into place. Outside the viewport, the fleet hadn't moved. Not really. Minor adjustments. Positioning. The kind that doesn't look like anything unless you understand what you're looking at. "They can't ignore this," Orvis said finally. "No. They can't fight it either." "No." He looked at me. "So what do they do?" I thought about that for a moment. Then I said, "They calculate." Because that's what this had become. Not a conflict. Not a debate. A calculation. Cost versus outcome. Action versus consequence. And the variables had just changed. A signal chimed softly on the terminal. Incoming transmission. Orvis glanced at it, then back at me. "Is this it?" he asked. "Part of it," I said. Because there was one more step. The part that turned a private resolution into something larger. The part that made sure this wouldn't be forgotten the moment it ended. The part that ensured the next time, no one would make the same mistake. The public channel opened. Across the station. Across every connected system. No encryption. No restriction. Just broadcast. Orvis leaned forward slightly as the feed came alive. Admiral Voss appeared on the screen. Same posture. Same calm. Same certainty. She didn't mention the Kareth document. Didn't acknowledge the legal argument. She didn't need to. Instead, she stated facts. Verifiable. Documented. Case number. Treaty. Articles. Each one something anyone listening could check for themselves. Each one something that didn't require belief. Only access. And then she did something most species don't. She invited verification. Not demanded compliance. Not issued threats. She simply made the information available. And ended the transmission. Orvis sat very still for a moment. Then he turned to the terminal beside him. Access logs were already updating. Requests flooding in. Chips. Stations. Independent terminals. All pulling the same data. They're looking, he said. Yes. They're checking if it's real. Yes. He watched the numbers climb. They didn't think it was, he said quietly. Most didn't, I replied. Because until you see something work, it's just a concept. A possibility. An idea. But once you see it, once you watch it happen in real time, it becomes something else. Something usable. Something you can rely on. Orvis leaned back slowly. They're not just resolving this, he said. No. They're showing everyone how it gets resolved. Yes. He exhaled. A long, steady breath. Then this doesn't end here. I shook my head slightly. No, I said. It starts here. Because the moment people understand that something works, they start asking the only question that matters. How do I get access?